Welcome to this special panel event on sustainability and business growth, home and away. I'd like to thank our panelists for their support, and particularly I'd like to thank GS1 UK for their involvement and engagement in all that we do. This autumn, consumer behaviour is being driven by rising inflation, energy prices, climate change, social and sustainability issues. This panel is designed to provide some thoughts and guidelines as to how your business can adapt, operate, fund and grow effectively in these new commercial landscapes, both in the UK and globally. Before I introduce you to our august panel of speakers, I'd like to ask Sarah Atkins from GS1 UK to provide us with some colour and context on the importance of sustainability to GS1 UK and their members. Sarah, over to you.
Colour and context, I love that. Welcome everybody, and I'm really delighted to have, as Mark's just said, this august panel with us here today. You may wonder, GS1 UK, infamous for our barcodes, but what is it that really gets us into the table, around the table, having these sorts of conversations? And we have 58,000 members that range from the smallest of new startup brands all the way through to the large guys with the Amazons and the NHS. Everybody has a challenge around this topic. So we've conducted some bespoke research with Carl and the team from Future Planet, who we'll be talking about it a little bit later, to try and understand what's keeping SMEs awake around this topic of sustainability. And when you think that 2/3 of small businesses haven't even started to get a plan together in this area, and the government has decided that we're going to be net zero by 2050, we know that there is a lot of work to do. But we really think that there is some hope, because the small businesses are driven out of passion. Yes, they're wearing multiple hats as their founders and the entrepreneurs that are leading them, but they also have ambition and nimbleness and that agility that can help them drive the change and actually be the change. And that's why we want to be part of this community. And our standards, we can wax lyrical on how they can help that, because 60% of the people that we talk to were looking at switching materials, and 72% of them needed a better understanding of the provenance within their supply chain in order to complete their plans. And our standards can fundamentally help unlock that quality trusted data. But let's get on with the debate and the conversation, and please, by all means, pop your questions in the chat, and we'll have some time at the end to open up to the panel, and you get the chance to speak to them directly. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. So let's come straight away to Carl from Future Planet. Carl, tell us a little bit about Future Planet and the community that you're building.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Sarah, for your kind words. It's exciting to work with you. Hello, everyone. Happy afternoon. Hope you're all well. Future Planet is a community of action for professionals, purposeful people, and wonderful partners such as GS1 UK, who are working to transform our world to be circular, equitable, regenerative, or sustainable, whichever way you choose to look at it. The community is inclusive and vetted, so you're with relevant peers. It's cross-sector, cross-function community with people from brands and organizations like Anglian Water, Cafe Direct, Lululemon, Innocent Drinks, Mindful Chef, Planet Organic, Rafa Racing, and GS1 UK. It's a community united by values of action, authenticity, kindness, and it's a community for leaders and learners, and acknowledges we're often both. And we empower you to save time by sharing trusted solutions, receive and share support on impact challenges, and when we come together, we can discover opportunities to collaborate and act on systems change. And in doing that, we can scale up solutions much more effectively. This can be a somewhat difficult journey. If we do it alone, when we go together, it's much easier. When you join the community, we map out the impact themes you're working on. We've got 43, from biodiversity and carbon reduction all the way through to waste and water. And then through a program of activities, an online platform, and curated working circles, we support you to connect with your peers, empower you to achieve your goals. That's effectively how the community is structured. Thanks.
Carl, that's great. Thank you for that outline. Could you give us a bit of a definition of what sustainability is in terms of the big picture context of climate change? And I'm conscious, obviously, Sarah mentioned Future Planet's been involved in this survey. It'd be great to hear insight from you around some of the examples across those sectors like household goods, food, cosmetics, apparel, both in the UK and globally. Thanks, Mark. That's great. Yeah, we did a piece of work with GS1 UK to understand across 17 different areas the sustainable perspectives and priorities of both GS1 members and also where they overlapped with Future Planet members as well, which has been incredibly informative. So the majority of the rest of my words that I'll share will share some insight on that and give us some examples as well. Sustainability is a societal goal that broadly aims for humans to safely coexist on planet Earth over a long time. That's the definition of it. But what does that mean for us as business leaders? It means considering business in a deeper context than just making money. It's about the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. We don't go as far necessarily as Yvonne Chevard, who gifted Patagonia to the planet, although it would be awesome if we did. We do need to reimagine all our roles, all our actions, and the KPIs that we measure ourselves on. And this is more than just being altruistic. As Sarah mentioned, we've got a target in the UK to be net zero by 2050. And the majority from our research and from others, well, the majority of SMEs and other organizations are at the beginning of that journey, even though some have gone some way down it. So most of us are on the journey of getting to net zero. And there are many challenges there for us to all solve in that space. Unabated, climate change will have dramatic effects on inequality, poverty, and economic opportunity. I'm sure you know that. That's why you're probably here today. But we've just 7 years. I don't really agree with the government totally. I think we've got 7 years to keep the world under 1.5 degrees, and I'm not alone in that thinking. And so the time is very much to act is now. To that end, it's been energizing and empowering to collaborate with Team GS1 UK. The reach and the impact that you can have with such a large membership is phenomenal. And so to kick off the partnership, as I mentioned, we did a survey. And so here are some of the results or some of the insight that's arrived from that. 71% of organizations reported their employees feel empowered to take action. That is a real opportunity to turn that enthusiasm into action by educating employees on the most impactful strategies. We're starting to see employees' key performance indicators driving change. That means contracts or other things that might have, or reviews that employees might have. 36% of respondents stating their employee KPIs directly contribute to their sustainability targets. Scaling up climate causes and KPIs in contracts and remuneration, so connecting that to climate action, is a quick way for us to kickstart transformation and engage a whole organization. The Chancery Lane project is an excellent resource for this. Just 10% of respondents were sustainability professionals. The remaining 90% were like many of us here today, highlighting the need for us to create support for time-pressed non-experts and to empower sustainability professionals to share their knowledge with those people, and for us generally to share our knowledge in a more broad way. And Mark, I think we've got some roundtables that are happening in a couple of weeks' time, which is an example of that, how we can come together and support each other in specific thematic areas. What are the drivers for innovation? So circularity and sustainability are influencing innovation, which is great to see. There is, of course, the deposit return scheme, which will drive resource efficiency and fundamentally change the way we recycle for the better. We also saw that 68% of respondents have changed product designs or dropped entire ranges to reduce their environmental impact, with a further 26% shifting from product sales model to product as a service, which is the holy grail of how we're going to get out of this. It's not selling more, it's having a better relationship with our customers. And some of the examples of that, which I really love, is a brand called T-Mill, which is an online t-shirt seller. And so what they do is they sell your t-shirts to you, and when they've worn out, they take them back and then remake them back into t-shirts again. So they built a whole different way of looking at how they might sell t-shirts. Another one, which is working in the zero waste space, is Unpackage, which you might have seen in Planet Organic or Waitrose or others. And they're now rolling out zero waste in store in retail as well. So this is reimagining how we might have a relationship with customers around how we might be of service to them. For 63%, switching to more sustainable materials is high on the agenda, and a further 72% also ranked understanding the provenance of material resources as a near-term priority. There is a growing demand for clear and reliable sourced data to inform material choices.
Developing a better understanding of the provenance of materials represents a huge opportunity, which by tracking, tracing, and sharing information on their attributes and origins, GS1 standards support you here as well. And I think the same is consumer demand on transparency, or the sustainability characteristics and provenance of products. That's growing, and we see that tempered by the desire to not greenwash as well. Again, accurate data makes transparency possible, another space that the GS1 barcodes can support on. Another area we're seeing is certifications and frameworks such as B Corp, which are driving change. And that's not just typically in pioneering SMEs. It's also now starting to happen in much larger organizations like Danone and Nestle, where Nespresso has adopted B Corp. And I think that's only going to grow more and more and gives people a very sensible framework with which to work on as well. Regeneration and biodiversity are on the rise. These topics are very close to my heart. With promoting biodiversity as a priority amongst 42% of people. There's a lot of people that aren't necessarily making that connection between climate and biodiversity, but it definitely needs to be made. And this is a step change on where we were before. We're seeing a lot of new roles come up for regenerative agriculture. Diageo, Kraft, Heinz, Walmart, and Unilever all have people focused on this as a topic. And we're seeing collaborations that are very interesting in the market. So Mindful Chef recently collaborated with Soil Heroes to develop regenerative agriculture in their supply chain. So this is an emerging theme, and it's particularly important because the link between climate, nature, and biodiversity gains is clear in the minds of many professionals and will get clearer and clearer. A recent UN report recently found that 1 million animal plant species are now threatened by extinction, many within decades. And the IPBES chair, Sir Robert Watson, commented that the health of ecosystems on which we and all other species depend is deteriorating more rapidly than ever. We are eroding the very foundations of our economies, livelihoods, food security, health, and quality of life worldwide. So these major global challenges are definitely interlocked, and we can't focus on just one. We have to look at all different aspects of these. These natural challenges also affect the core commercials of our business. And 65% of those surveyed rank the rising cost of goods as the biggest challenge they're currently facing in business, highlighting how, in part, the climate biodiversity crisis, and I know it's not just that alone, but it's partly related to that, is already impacting global supply and the cost of doing business. So we might look at Pakistan, for example, and think about how little they would have been able to export whilst the floods were there through that part of the year, or how little they might have been able to import. 71% also noted that sustainable sourcing was a priority. This suggests that it's not simply a case of managing costs at all costs. For many businesses, managing their environmental impact is as important as saving money. And by increasing traceability across global and local supply chains, GS1 standards enable businesses to see full picture of what they're working on. And by analyzing efficiency and revealing hidden costs, businesses can take the necessary steps to reduce their environmental impact through decision based on trusted data. And we're seeing data being a key challenge, but also a key opportunity space for many, both large retailers, but also many other organizations and businesses as well. If you can't see it, you can't manage it, you can't act on it. And finally, I guess we're all in this together, almost. So just over half of respondents cited environmental and social justice as a near-term priority, with a further 22% citing it as somewhat of a priority. Equality and inclusion was at 60%, human rights at 64%. What are the other people doing about these topics? I don't know. Modern slavery, child labor, and human traffic all fit within that 64%. And equitable pay coming in at 52%. These are, I think, not worrying, but it's definitely a space for us to improve in. Clearly more needs to be done and more needs to be made to make it a priority for this area. The impacts of climate change will be felt the most by those that have the least, and often in the poorest countries and communities throughout the world and supply chains. We need to prioritize a just transition, valuing people over prices. Consumer phone pioneer Fairphone's collaboration on fair and gold and lithium mining is a project to watch and to look at that if you want to see what best practice looks like in the space. There are many other leaders, Cafe Direct and many others that are looking at that as a space that they want to operate in as well. So that's broadly, I think, a little bit of an overview about where we are. I think there's a couple of other small things that I share. Only 25% of people are measuring scope 3 emissions. That's vast, certainly in SMEs. More needs to be done there, a lot more needs to be done. And if you want to see quick, massive wins, methane, which has been overlooked by many, and yet has more than 80 times the warming power of carbon dioxide, is one of the areas where we could make the quickest wins in this space. So looking and understanding where methane affects your supply chain is definitely going to be a quick win, and one that's sometimes overlooked. Thank you. That was a rattle.
Amazing.
Carl, that was a fantastic overview. Thank you so much for that. We'll come back to some pertinent questions later. So I'd like to move from where Carl is, and actually he's not in the UK. I think he's in Spain. But I'd like to move from where Carl is in Europe to New York, and welcome Andy Taylor from Companies for Net Zero Green Tech. Welcome, Andy. Would you mind just giving us a short background on what you do, and give us a sense of where North America and the rest of the world stands on sustainability presently, Andy?
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Andy Taylor, and I'm representing a couple of companies. And the specific theme that I've been asked to cover is net zero market drivers, and our view of why accelerating to net zero is now such a business critical issue for every company to explore and embrace. Before I begin in too much detail, Mark asked me to share a little bit more about my background as to where I'm coming from in relation to being able to present to you on these material themes. My background is largely 25 years in working with substantial corporates in large-scale M&A transactions. And from that experience, I learned that many companies face incredible inertia and obstacles to change anything, to transform. And so in the last 4 years, I pivoted my career to join Green Tech. It's one of the founding partners. And what we do is invest in and mentor market-ready net zero technologies, where we help them scale into the large corporate market and internationally. Our focus of our portfolio is very much on decarbonising buildings, where now we're bringing funded net zero solutions to decarbonise buildings across the UK. We also look at supporting the decarbonising of transport and fleets. And we also have a very big focus on the circular economy. The last 2 years, I've also joined as a partner in Companies for Net Zero, which is a US-based organisation focused on bringing global companies together and their thought leaders to partner, collaborate, innovate, share best practice on delivered net zero. We're all about the action and not the talk. It's all about global thought leadership and demonstrating examples of delivered net zero and innovation. To support this, we've also founded a new net zero insights and education app called the CNZ Eco Forum. And what we're doing there is bringing daily micro content on demand to every employee of every company as our target to guide them on what global net zero looks like, so that they can see the actions being taken, they can emulate, support, and nurture their company doing the same, with everyone becoming net zero ambassadors. So it's on-demand content. It's a combination of summarized insights daily, short-form video content, and also presentations and case studies on delivered net zero. Focusing on the major theme, we're describing net zero as a megatrend right now, with major risks, but also opportunities present right across this theme. The implication of net zero right now is that we feel there's almost a massive storm, climate storm coming at companies. If you imagine sitting on a beach and seeing huge black clouds rolling in. And this is largely driven now by consumer and customer preference. We've released surveys on our app that 73% of Gen Z and millennial Americans are now expressing direct preference to only buy from net zero companies and will actively boycott those who are not. Those consumer trends are present all through Europe as well. 50% of British people feel guilty now if they buy something that's not net zero. So companies are now having to embrace a whole new net zero paradigm in terms of appealing to their customer base, and this goes to the heart of brand proposition. A recent example is what Patagonia have done in becoming a not-profit organization and directing their profits to environmental causes. They've now, in my view, transcended the outdoor apparel market as a brand leader, using net zero and the environment and the planet as a fundamental brand enhancement. The other thing that's a major pressure point for companies is recruiting and retaining staff. A lot of the Gen Z cohort coming out of universities now are very focused on only working for companies for mission, for value, for purpose. An example is some of the top young lawyers coming out of the law firms and law schools are refusing to work with the top 5 law firms if they've got too much fossil fuel and mining legacy client base. This is real. Senior executives in large organizations like Shell and BP are resigning because they don't feel comfortable working for such companies anymore based on some of the challenges they're facing. Another area is appealing to investors, where a lot of listed companies now are having very significant issues with their investor base, saying that if they're not net zero, they're going to withdraw support. A lot of companies trying to raise capital now need to demonstrate their net zero credentials to get the right investor support. There's also access to green bonds and lower cost of debt if companies are willing to embrace ESG, environmental social governance principles, and demonstrate their genuine commitment to net zero. There's a lot of legislation coming through. For example, landlords in the UK will not be allowed to rent their properties in 2028 unless they achieve a certain EPC band. There's also organizations like Climate Trace coming to the market, where they are allowing protagonists to look at a building on Google Maps and use that to determine the carbon profile of that building and maybe then hold the company to account. So our point is there's huge risk coming in terms of storm clouds. If companies are willing to embrace net zero, then they can create this beautiful blue sky protection from those storms coming through. And that is where you can create, like I said with Patagonia, market-leading brand enhancement. It's increasing customer satisfaction, the idea of appealing to all of your staff to come and work for you or to stay working for you, having long-term investors work with you, and preventing adverse public scrutiny. So these are all the things that, if you're a consumer-facing organization in the GS1 network, we highly recommend that you start to look very closely at what your net zero credentials are, and that could have a huge difference to your future success. From the point of view of a standing start, many small enterprises and very large companies are struggling with, okay, well, what do I do? How do I achieve net zero? And our proposition is that the way to change anything is our cycle to net zero. It's a cycle of life, frankly. If you are going to want to mitigate your carbon and your waste, the starting point is to measure what you have. So we're partnering with leading companies like Planetly and Compare Your Footprint, who are helping large companies and small companies alike to measure their carbon. This is scope 1, which is largely diesel and petrol costs for operating fleets. Scope 2, which is largely electricity for operating your factories and warehouses and buildings. And scope 3, which is largely your teleworking staff or your commuting staff, but then also your embedded carbon of your entire supply chain. So once you've measured all your carbon, then you can start to create a plan of how to reduce it. And so we're also partnering with leading global consultancies to bring them into our ecosystem to guide our client base into accelerating to net zero. And then it's engaging with different technologies that can deliver net zero, such as sustainable diesel fuel, such as sustainable aviation fuel for the transport sector. It's engaging with a whole lot of HVAC technologies that we have in the market. It's engaging with solar panels and batteries to decarbonize offices and buildings and warehouses. And then once you've engaged in those partner propositions, it's then a matter of delivering on those outcomes to accelerate to net zero. And then we also have partnerships with people like EcoVadis, who can come in and audit a company delivering net zero so that they can justify to their stakeholders that they are actually on a defined path and are achieving outcomes. So please do feel free to get in touch if you'd like to learn more about accelerating to net zero. And we're on mission to make a difference in the world. So we welcome you joining us on that journey. Thank you.
Andy, thank you. We're going to move on for the time being, and if you can just, when we come to the Q&A, just come close to the mic, because some of the stuff couldn't quite hear all of it, but it was very powerful in terms of what you were talking about from the slides. I'd like, if I may, to welcome and ask all Vingold to come to camera. Delighted to have you here, all from Unrest. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and the background of Unrest?
Yes, hello everyone. Hope we've got lots of founders building in the ethical space. So we are Unrest, and we help consumer founders, hopefully like yourself, who are building consumer-facing products. So we have been built specifically to help founders like yourselves. And the reason for our creation is because more and more founders are building in this space, and the world needs more founders to build ethical consumer products, because consumption is the #1 cause of the depletion of resources around our planet. And so we support founders here in London and also the north of England, and we'll be expanding internationally very soon. And the way that we support people is we run a 4-month program which covers everything from branding, accounting, global expansion, where we work with Ian and Mark closely on. And so what our job is really fundamentally to do is to help you as a founder grow very strong foundations for your business so that you can grow to be a global 100 million plus valued business. So yeah, we do that here, 4 months, and then we help you raise capital at the end of that by working with angel investors, VCs, to kind of take you to that next step of the journey. So just to reiterate, we are really looking for founders who have the vision and ambition and product ideas that are there to build a business that is going to be a global 100 million plus revenue business. So, that's things like Allbirds that we've seen float recently on the New York Stock Exchange. There's things like Beyond Meat. We obviously have some more traditional examples like Innocent, Patagonia, Lululemon, which Carl mentioned. So those kind of give you a sense of what we work on. We also work on tech businesses. So if you've ever used Headspace or Calm, you've used a type of product that we would also be supporting and looking to work with. So a real range of tech and non-tech. And yes, we've done 32 companies now, and our next cohort launches in March next year. We're now currently working with 16, 17 businesses on our current cohort.
A deeper dive on the funding landscape and investor strategies around all that you do.
Yeah, of course. Look, we know that any business needs capital to survive if it's to scale quickly. And we work with ambitious founders who look to scale quickly because, again, Carl mentioned the kind of 7-year time horizon. We do need to act quickly, and therefore the change that we need to make in the world needs to happen very quickly. And for that to happen, you're probably going to need quite a lot of capital to do that. So we expect founders will need to raise between 10 and hundreds of millions to grow their business. So we need to work with a new type of investor who understands sustainability, understands what it takes to grow that kind of business. And so the exciting news and the good news, if you are building a startup in this space, is that there is a growing number of investors, actually at all stages, who are supporting your kind of business. So to give you a few examples, in the last 18 months, about $500 million has been raised by venture capital funds just here in the UK alone to invest in pre-seed and seed stage startups. So funds like Giant Ventures, funds like Jamjar, Eka, Ada are all focused in the space, and many, many more. And the exciting news beyond that is that if you are hitting the growth and kind of maturity stage of your business, there's really strong incentives and pressure on growth investors, private equity, to also continue to support you with capital on that journey. But one thing that we're seeing from these investors yes, there's a lot of capital, but founders are not necessarily set up and aware about how to reach these investors, both from how you present the narrative, who these new investors are, what are they looking for, how do you speak to them using the new language, and they'll all have a set of criteria which is quite different. So, in any emerging market, any emerging space, there is a lot of misalignment. Everybody is doing things in their own way to begin with. And so what we try to do again with the program is bring these investors in and have them come in and sit in round tables, come and sit in fireside chats and talk to our founders about what they're looking for. So, if you are going to go speak to an investor for a £1 million check when you leave our program, you know what it is that they're looking for. So your chance of successfully raising is increased. And often you've already met these investors as part of your participation on the program. So so fundamentally my kind of core message is there's a growing landscape. It's moving in the right direction, but there are some challenges around how you engage with those investors. And so, people like us are trying to support people like you in kind of activating and getting that money, because it does need to be going to these great impact-led businesses rather than, I would say, the kind of old way of doing business, which was profit only.
Or you mentioned just two examples, Allbirds and Meet Beyond have done super well. Maybe you can, it's peer-to-peer journey, so the respect that founders who would look up to those brands, can you maybe give us a sense of a little bit of their journey, and that might inspire others to do the same?
Yeah, look, maybe I'll give you a bit of stats around, these companies, and I'd say they're a new breed of company and how they're built and what they do. So there's two sides to this. It's the what and the how, and both are really important. So, very, very briefly, companies that are mission driven see growth that is 2.5 times faster than non-mission driven companies. So, of course, a Beyond Meat product is very clearly a mission-driven product. A Calm is a very clearly mission-driven. Allbirds, very mission-driven. So their growth rate is faster. That means that they're getting customers quicker than other brands, which is really, really strong. Having a strong brand is really critical. If you look at the Fortune 500 companies, 70% of the value of those companies, of that stock, is attributed to brand equity, which really means that you need to have a really strong brand, and you need to do that from day one. And all of those companies unarguably have built really strong brands from day one. And again, that's something that we really focus on. So we have partnered up with the world's strongest design creative studio, and every brand that comes through our accelerator has a world-class brand that they leave with. The third piece is around diverse teams. So diversity of thoughts, diversity is really critical when you're building a business over 5 to 7 year term. And that's because you need to have creative solutions to the big challenges that we have. And so we see that diverse teams deliver 2.3 times more value in terms of share price. And finally, having a strong culture and having strong founder well-being. So looking after yourself and making sure that you're building a place that people actually want to work in. We see a 65% increase in share price for companies that have engaging culture. And that's because people stay there. It's because people are motivated, people work hard. And so those are really the four things. We focus on all of those. That's really the anchor of our program. And in terms of what does that result in? So, I'll give you, again, just a couple of numbers here. But Beyond Meat, its IPO, its share price doubled. Allbirds is valued over 4 billion today, and its stock surged 91% in its IPO. I'll contrast that with a company like Facebook, where its stock price fell by about 25% on its IPO. So we are seeing the market also responding to these kind of four aspects that we talk about at Unrest. So, we just basically talk about companies need to be built in this new way. And our job is to help you and other founders do that. So, if anyone is doing that and is interested, we'd love to hear from you, and you can jump on our website and find more information. So yeah, very excited for you and for the world.
Well, thank you. And I love your sense of mission and drive. That's essential. And talking about mission drive, I'd love to introduce now someone who certainly has that, and that's Jonas from Wild and Stone. Catherine, can you tell us a little bit about what Wild and Stone is and what you do?
Sure, thanks Mark, and thanks for having me here today. So hi everyone, my name is Jonas and I'm the CVO at a company called Wild and Stone. We are a retail brand on a mission to make high quality, eco-friendly products that help create a future planet that is healthier for future generations. We do this by creating what we call easy to adopt, usable and stylish alternatives to commonly used household plastics. The idea being that we need to make it as easy as possible and reduce any resistance for the common consumer to use our products rather than the commonly used plastic alternative. So of course, sustainability is the absolute heart of our brand, and all of the products we create have traceable supply chains. We have to make sure that they are created responsibly and as sustainably as possible in terms of the people and the planet within them. We started out back in 2018, and as of this summer, we've got a team of about 8 people. We've got over 100 product lines now that we are selling globally. You could find us stocked in places such as the Eden Project. We're sold on Able and Cole. We're in multiple aquariums, etc., just to name a few. COVID and the war in Ukraine have, of course, brought quite a few challenges over the last few months. However, last autumn, we were very lucky in that we managed to raise 200% of our funding target on Cedar's crowdfunding platform. And that has allowed us to drive our growth over the last 12 months. And we've seen growth of, we've doubled our growth, and we've seen a 10x growth on our wholesale strategy in the UK as well.
Catherine, thank you. I'm really interested in your title. Most people have the title of CEO, but you have a title of CVO. Would you like to explain a little bit more about that title and the purpose of that in the business?
Sure. So yeah, it is a little bit of a strange title. And previously my title was CPO, so Chief Product Officer. But in truth, my role really does fit into 2 halves. I do own the product side of the business, but I also lead our brand strategy as well. On the product side of things, being an eco products company, I actually spend a lot of my time not just developing the end product, what it will do, what it will look like, but constructing the global supply chains behind it. We, as I mentioned earlier, we put a lot of work into the supply chains. They have to be as sustainable as we can possibly make them at the time. So having over 100 different product lines, we work with multiple manufacturers, as you can imagine. So it's absolutely critical that we're working with organizations on the ground and global framework bodies to make sure that our manufacturers are operating to certain social standards. The employees within the factories all have to be treated to certain levels, so treated really well, paid much more than the living wage that you see in that country and that region of that country even. The companies, we look for things like, are the companies investing into their employees to actually enhance their quality of life? So pensions, maternity leave. One company we work for actually offers almost a loan to its employees, which is charged at a lower interest rate than the local banks, which allows their employees to get onto the housing ladder more easily. So all these things that we're looking for to see if they're really investing in their people. Obviously things like maintaining safe working conditions as well, and making sure their HR teams are trained to spot underage or slave labor is critical too. In terms of the planet piece, we have to be really careful how we source the materials we use in our production. So we will only use materials that are certified ethical sources like FSC certified woods or organic cottons, so that we've got the traceability on the supply chain there. The other part of my role is the brand strategy piece. So a lot of time gets spent looking at innovations, exploring new materials and technologies that are coming out at the moment. And there are so many that are coming forward. Sustainability is a really big focus. And so we're just seeing new things popping on the scene all the time. You know, what materials are out there, like bioplastics or materials that are made from waste products? How can we promote circularity, and how can we keep taking out petroleum-based plastics from common usage? So that's a big part of it. And then really the other part of my role, the final part, is the marketing piece. So how are we positioning our brand to the consumer? What do we want people to think and feel when they come across Wild and Stone? What appetite and sentiment towards eco products are we creating? And that's something that varies greatly across different global regions. So when we're launching into different areas around the world, we do have to design custom go-to-market plans per country, basically.
Catherine, thank you for that. And we'll come back with some questions a bit later on, if that's okay. But thank you for that vision thing. Wonderful, thank you. From vision, I'd like to move to support, and delighted and thrilled, as always, to have Estelle Dingley from the Department of International Trade on this session. And Estelle, you've got some interesting information around helping companies expand internationally, and you've got some great connections, events, and advice on things like sustainable packaging to talk to us about.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Well, when we help companies go and enter new markets, one of the key points is for them to know how to comply. For example, there's a new rule in place now for France and Germany around packaging and how to be responsible about it. So we would encourage companies to then find out more information about the extended producer responsibility, the EPR, and we will also be able to connect them with service providers who'll be able to just really inform them and make them understand how to register, how to be compliant in that market. So we can also help companies when it comes to the B Corp registration. We can help with groups that are going to support them and help them navigate how to do it, because my understanding is it's quite a long and process, and sometimes companies have heard a few of them just thinking, you know, I need somebody to help hold my hand here. We also work with marketplaces, and we're now looking at onboarding more sustainable marketplaces such as Circular. So if you come and apply through our Selling Online Overseas tool, then we can just get you in touch with them. And that's one of many things. There's also the environmental and social governance for some larger companies. So we can make introduction to the right contact and companies can get the support and the advice they need.
Estelle, thanks very much indeed. And just to sort of, before we go on to the Q&A session, just to say, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be running a very a deeper dive granular workshop where there'll be an expansion of the experts across all sorts of things, from product design, packaging, manufacturing, logistics, delivery, and brand. All the issues that we're highlighting here, there'll be a deeper dive workshop in 2 weeks' time for those companies who are interested. Let's move on to a bit of Q&A, and I'd like to, if I can, Andy, so long as your mic works, could you give us a couple of examples of some companies in relation to the circular economy around renewals and net zero that are being successful globally?
We're delighted, Mark. There's a number of companies that are scaling massively at the moment into the world. We are particularly working with a number of companies that are decarbonising real estate at the moment. This is a total ecosystem of things like solar panels and nanotech batteries, combined with things like HVAC, which is air conditioning technology, and also air flushing toilets. So we've also partnered with a £600 million fund at the moment that is working with that ecosystem to offer every company a funded net zero solution, that means they're not having to take their own balance sheet at risk. This is all effectively funded net zero. And then on the other side of the coin, with our Trover app and our ecosystem, we have a number of our recycling partners already distributed across Dubai and the UK. We're currently collecting over 60,000 plastic bottles in Abu Dhabi at the moment, with people getting discounted bus tickets for putting their recycling bottles into our ecosystem network. So this is the kind of technologies that we are partnering with, and including Wild and Stone in the consumer sector, try and help everyone accelerate to net zero with delivered, functional, finance, and proven net zero technologies.
Andy, thanks for that. Carl, what's your take on this and how ESG can be leveraged to help position and grow businesses, big or small?
Go big or go home. I think ESG is the next frontier of innovation, isn't it? Really, it's a primary driver for growth and innovation, as we're seeing. And there's two parts to it. So there's the risk of not doing it right, both from a reputation, but also a revenue basis on tarnished, on a tarnished reputation. This could be particularly strong, for example, if you're not investing in the people and the environment in your supply chain, and then want to have a relationship with those same people who you want to be customers in the markets that you're procuring from. And there's also looking at it as from a growth perspective as well. So a lot of consumers now are turning towards sustainability as one of the key drivers, or brand purpose as one of the key drivers in terms of when they choose to make a purchasing decision. Recent research by Criterio, a commercial media platform for the open internet, found that 2/3 of consumers in France are open to trying a new brand. More than half of them, 58%, said they had to agree with the brand's value and how that mattered. And in Spain, 76% of consumers are willing to try a new brand, but only if they agree with the brand's mission and values. So there's a very strong correlation between mission, brand, purpose, values. And the only way that mission, brand, and purpose works well is if you focus on the E and the S and the G, effectively. So I think we're seeing a massive transition in focus on this. We've got a section of businesses and leaders that are leading, and we've got many that are now looking to catch up. And I would say that you don't want to be left behind, would be my estimation.
Thanks, Carl. And all, how does that play choices that obviously that drives in funding? Does that give more options?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, from a funding perspective, the whole ESG and sustainability agenda, how is that? What choices are happening there? What elements of growth and change do you see there?
Well, from a funding perspective, we are seeing, I would say, almost an explosion in investors recognizing that companies need to be built in a new way. So, I kind of gave a few examples of the toppy end of companies that are IPOing, and there's a pension funds that are investing at that end. And those companies effectively, when they invest and you see the valuations, double, triple, 90% higher than what they're being listed at. What that's telling you is that there are many funders who see that the long-term direction of value creation is in building sustainable businesses. So effectively what you as a founder building a business like that should be seeing and hearing is, okay, in the long run, it is more valuable for me, and people are recognizing that it is more valuable to build a business this way. And that's because fundamentally there is a consumer mindset shift. Ultimately everything is about what's happening in the general population, what's happening around the world, how are people responding to brands. And again, Carl talked about it in his kind of segment at the beginning. People want to buy. And people want to work, and people want to start businesses that are ethical and sustainable. So investors see that, and of course there are some investors that don't. And maybe Catherine, you've talked to a lot of investors who are not quite there on the journey, and I'm sure many of you will also come across a lot of them, and that can be frustrating sometimes when you have those conversations. But there are also a hell of a lot of investors who are who do see that. And, fundamentally the group that is in the yes camp of saying, we want to invest, we want to work, we want to build sustainable businesses, that pile is growing. I set up Unrest 2.5 years ago, and 2.5 years ago, people were telling me, I'm not sure if I want to invest. I'm not sure if it's a fad or whether this is a long-term trend. And today, I almost don't hear that from investors. So that change has happened really quickly. And so if I'm a founder and I'm getting those no's all the time, I would take kind of courage and know that the world is heading in this direction, and just keep on going.
Or I think you're right. There has been a huge and significant shift of mind over the last year or two, and that's only going to get more and more. And Catherine, how does that play? Obviously, all mentioned this being driven by consumers and also funders, but are there nuances in terms of different marketplaces, in terms of routes to market, in terms of different regions of how you might market or sell your products, for instance?
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, we've got multiple routes to market. The UK is our primary market at the moment, and it's the first market we launched in, obviously. So we sell directly, we sell through marketplaces, we have a wholesale channel and a distribution channel. In the UK, the appetite and sentiment towards eco is really quite good now, and I'd say that our business is evenly spread, probably over 3 channels: direct, through marketplaces, and we've got a very strong wholesale strategy. We don't do as much distribution because obviously we're in the UK, so we're effectively our own distributor. But the 2 main markets we're seeing growth in at the moment are very much the US and Europe. Looking at the US, there's different complexities. So, we have to make sure all of our products are certified to a different level of standards in the US. Selling in the US is also complicated because every different state has different taxation rules. So it can be a really big headache before you even launch. But I would say in the US, they are, dare I say it, somewhat behind on the adoption curve for eco appetite. So there's a huge opportunity there if you can launch your brand and get a foot in and then grow from there. Conversely, in Europe, I would say that the appetite for eco products is really quite high. And obviously it differs country to country, but the Nordics especially, very strong appetite. But in terms of complexity in Europe, it's just different. Logistics and shipping has become hugely complicated since Brexit. I mean, that's caused us no end of headache in Q1 this year. And wholesale can sometimes be a little bit harder in Europe because there's multiple languages that are spoken. So launching into wholesale in a non-English speaking country can be harder. There's more of a sentiment to go for a local brand where the product packaging is in the national language, for example. What we've found particularly useful is utilizing marketplaces. So marketplaces allow us to dip our toe into these different regions, takes a lot of the complexity away of the shipping. Sometimes the taxation elements are dealt with on the marketplaces too. So we can test the water in different regions before we then double down and go much harder into certain regions, which obviously takes a lot more investment from us to do. And the other thing that's been quite successful for us, certainly in Europe, would be distribution. So distribution partners, and we've worked quite a lot with the DIT on this actually, identifying distribution partners in certain European countries. They know the market, they know what works, they know how to launch a brand and a product. So that's a really good route to market for us in certain countries as well. So the long and the short of it is, yes, every country seems to have different nuances, different appetite towards eco, and different channels and routes to market seem to work better in different places.
Catherine, thank you. Sarah, I'm conscious you've been making copious notes on all this fascinating information that's come our way. What's your sense of where GS1 members should go forward on sustainability and
So we're very lucky in the fact that we have the opportunity to talk to a lot of early stage founders, and I'm just reminiscing about one that I had not that long ago, with a canned wine brand. And I did the bit that we all do, which said, okay, well, do you want to explain to me about, how important sustainability is to your business, Ollie? And he went, Sarah, it's only old people like you that even talk about sustainability like it's a separate business model anymore. We built our business with it at its core because that's what it's like. It's a bit like people talking about digital as if it's still a different channel or a different thing. He said it's just pervasive, and it's now almost table stakes for anyone that we're talking to from an investment perspective. So I think, to Or's point, in the space of just a couple of years, it's gone from being a nice to have to an absolute necessity. And part of the reason why we put this session forward is we want to make sure that all of those businesses that join GS1 UK have the opportunity to get this sort of stellar advice and start off on the right foot. Because when you're making those initial choices, you get very wedded into your manufacturers and your supply chain partners. And if you're doing it, let's do it right with the right advice, which then makes the journey that much easier. There's nothing worse than seeing a brand get to a super stage in their growth and then realize they have to unpack all of that great work that they've done because it's not actually going to comply with regulation. And we're seeing a lot of this around topics like Carl talked around DRS, deposit return schemes. So in less than a year, Scotland will be launching a scheme where all bottles, cans and plastic bottles will have a levy on them and being returned to consumers. And we have little brands that are saying, my production window is longer than that, and I need to know about this information so I can get on the front foot. So, we really want to make sure we can be that conduit for the information, the same way as Estelle's doing with the guys at the DIT, because there's lots of different ways. And if we can find just that one small business and help them start their journey better, then I think we're all going to be in a much better place.
Thank you, Sarah. Very wise words indeed. And just to re-emphasize about that, and for the members, in 2 weeks' time we will be doing a granular deep dive workshop where we will look at these issues on a one-to-one basis for companies. So please, we'll be sending that information out after this event to all those who've signed up, and promoting it through the kindness of Marianne and Sarah through GS1. And it just leaves me to say, as the hour strikes 5, to thank all our panelists for what has been an insightful and really dynamic panel event, and always to thank our partners and sponsors, GS1 UK, and of course the Department of International Trade. Thank you all, and let's keep this vision thing on message and going forward. Until the next time, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.